I am not a man. I am a force. I was born with blood in my fist, wind in my lungs, and fire in my eyes. I am Temüjin of the Blue Wolf clan. But the world would come to know me as Genghis Khan. Part 1. Born of Blood and Silence. I was born in 1162 into the dust and frost of the Mongol steppe. My father poisoned, my mother abandoned. I was raised by hunger, betrayal, fire. I learned early, loyalty is rare and survival is earned, not gifted. When the Temüjin chained me like a beast, I did not curse fate. I memorized their footsteps. Then I escaped, quiet as the wind, deadly as a storm. From nothing, I gathered men who believed not in my name, but in my will. Together, we carved destiny with blood and bone. The Eternal Storm. The life of Genghis Khan, as told by himself. 1. The Cry of the Steppe, 1162. When I first opened my eyes, the wind was already screaming. That was my lullaby, the howl of the steppe. My mother said I came out with a blood clot in my hand. In our world, that meant destiny, though no one said whether it would be great or cursed. My father was Yesuge, chieftain of the Borjigin, a hunter of men and wolves alike, fierce, proud, and always watching the horizon. He named me Temüjin after a warrior he'd defeated the same day. That name, they said, carried strength. But strength, I learned, is only part of survival. 1. A fatherless cub, 1171. One summer, my father was invited to feast with the Tatars. He came back with dark lips, coughing blood, poison, treachery, the kind of death that lingers in a child's mind. Our tribe abandoned us within days. My mother, Holun, stood alone. No gold, no yurt, no soldiers. Just her and her children in the cold. We ate roots, fought for scraps. My brothers and I were like wild dogs. I even killed my half-brother Bekter when he stole from our hunt. There was no softness in our youth. There was only survival. 3. Shackled, but not broken. 1177. The Temüjin came for me when I was still a boy. They bound me, yoked me like cattle. They feared what I might become. And they were right to. Thoughtful, but I watched, I listened, I studied their movements, their guards, their arrogance. And then one night, I slipped my bonds and vanished into the grass. Freedom is not given. You steal it in the dark.
4. The Fires of Loyalty. 1180s. Thoughtful, my mother once told me, a man is worth the friends who'd bleed for him. So I found mine. Borshu, who left his herd to ride with me. Jelmi, who nursed me back to life after battle, and my beloved Borte, stolen by the Merkits, until I returned with fire to take her back. Determined I bent no knee, took no master. Tribe by tribe, battle by battle, I rose. Some called me bandit, others savior, but they all came to know one truth. I could not be ignored. Very trends turned to ash. 1186 to 1201. Sad Jamuka was my anda, my blood brother. We had hunted together, shared salt, dreamt of unity. But power corrupts faster than poison. He crowned himself Gur Khan and turned his armies on me. Angry in the Battle of Dalen Baljut, he crushed me, captured my men, boiled them alive. That betrayal burned hotter than fire, but I returned with vengeance, my men stronger, my tactics sharper. Thoughtful when I defeated him in 1201, I had the chance to repay his cruelty. But I spared him, let the world see the difference between a tyrant and a Khan. 6. The world kneels, 1206. Proud, at the great Kurultai under the eternal blue sky, the tribes finally agreed. Enough of blood feuds, enough of small dreams. They crowned me Genghis Khan, universal ruler, and I gave them law. Yasa, fair but unbreakable. No more favoritism, no more birthright, only loyalty, discipline, and merit. Every man would ride equal beneath the storm I was building.
Part 2. Empire of Ashes. Part 2. Empire of Ashes. Thoughtful. They crowned me Genghis Khan in 1206. I gave them Yasa, law unbending, loyalty above tribe, merit above birth. I turned warriors into a nation. Angry. The Shia defied me. I crushed them. The Jin called us savages. I showed them what savagery meant. Then, the Khwarezm Shah murdered my envoys. He thought distance would protect him. He was wrong. Determined. From Bukhara to Samarkand to Merv, I burned a path across Central Asia. I did not conquer for gold. I conquered for justice, for order, for vengeance. The Eternal Storm, the life of Genghis Khan, as told by himself. Part 2. Empire of Ashes. The rise of global conquest, 1209 to 1221. It, the walls of Shisha, 1209. Reminiscing. They were the first to test me after I became Genghis Khan. The Western Shah, tucked behind mountains and walls of desert stone. Their emperor dared to defy my summons. He believed his cities were safe behind their high towers and silk robes. But walls are nothing to men who ride the wind. Proud. We crossed the Gobi with no maps, just instinct. My men grew thin, but their eyes burned with purpose. We seized cities one by one. We showed them that no mountain, no fortress, could silence the voice of a Khan. In the end, the Shia bowed, offered tribute, and begged mercy. I granted it. Ominous. For now.
The Dragon Falls. War with the Jin dynasty, 1211 to 1215. To the south, the Jin dynasty reigned like fat dragons over northern China. They had wealth, cities, armies 10 times our size. They looked at us as wolves from the north, dangerous but scattered. So I showed them the meaning of unity. We poured over the Great Wall like thunder. My sons, my generals, my archers, every one of them bled into the earth of China. We tore through forests, mountains, cities. We used captured Chinese engineers to build siege machines, some taller than their gates. Zhongdu, what they now call Beijing, was their crown. We burned it to the ground in 1215. Its gold melted into the earth. The emperor fled like a rabbit. The people, they remembered us, not just in fear, but in awe. Even as we burned, we learned. I took scholars, scribes, artisans, because conquest without civilization is nothing but ash on the wind.
3. The Khwarezmian Mistake, 1218. Then came the insult I could not ignore. I sent merchants westward to the Khwarezmian Empire, men of peace. They were robbed, humiliated, executed. I sent envoys,
One had his beard burned off, the other murdered outright. A fool of a Shah sat on that throne, swollen with pride. He had never met a man like me. I did not send another letter. I sent a fury. 4. The fire across Central Asia, 1219 to 1221. We crossed the Sirdaria and entered the lands of Khwarezm like a divine punishment. Bukhara, rich, thick with scholars and gold, fell first. I stood in their mosque and said, I am the punishment of God. If you had not committed great sins, God would not have sent a punishment like me. Samarkand followed. Their walls crumbled, their soldiers surrendered, and their Shah ran. Cowards always run. I chased him across deserts through storms until he died on a barren island, alone. But it was not just cities I destroyed legacies. Nishapur, where one of my generals was killed, I ordered razed until even the cats were slain. Merv, Herat, Urgench, these were not battles, these were warnings to the world. 5. The knowledge I took. But understand this, I spared the artisans, the doctors, the builders. What good is conquest if it leaves only silence? I took their knowledge and carried it east. I welcomed astronomers, mathematicians, engineers. My empire was growing, not just in land, but in wisdom. 6. The West trembles, prelude to Europe. As I cleansed the Khwarezmian lands, I sent 2 of my greatest minds, Jebe and Subutai, westward. They carved a trail through the Caucasus and into Kiev and Rus. At the Battle of the Kalka River, they crushed the Slavic princes, then disappeared like ghosts in the fog. They returned with maps, languages, rumors of empires that had never heard my name. That would not last. Part 3. The Shadow over the World. We reached the edges of the world. My generals rode beyond the Caspian, into Russia, Georgia, Hungary. We did not conquer Europe, not yet. We let them live, to tremble. But even a storm slows. In 1227, death found me, not on a battlefield, but in silence. I left one command, let no man find my grave, and so they didn't. Part 3. The Shadow over the World, 1221 to 1227, Final Conquests and the Death of a Storm. 1. The world had changed, and I had changed with it. By the year 1221, the earth was no longer the same. Cities whispered my name before sleep. Kings in distant lands clutched maps stained with fear. My banners flew from the Yellow River to the Oxus, but I was not yet satisfied. A true storm doesn't stop until it has circled the world. 2. The Art of War, the Science of Rule. My armies now moved like clockwork, 10,000-man units, each disciplined like a blade. We were not just warriors. We were messengers, traders, governors, even mathematicians. My scribes recorded the names of every soldier, the spoils of every raid, and the births of every child in our empire. I created a postal system that galloped faster than the wind, and laws that reached farther than any emperor's word had gone before. Every man, even the poorest shepherd, knew. Under my rule, even the powerful would kneel before justice. 3. Into Persia, Georgia, and beyond. I did not forget the allies or the traitors who helped the Khwarezm Shah. Georgia fell beneath Subutais' thunder. The Caucasus bled. The Alans and Kipchaks crumbled. In the west, we touched the fringes of the Christian kingdoms. Russia, Hungary, Poland. And we let them be, for now. I was not finished with the world, but the West had seen the shadow. They called us demons, monsters. I smiled when I heard it. Better they fear the truth than believe a comforting lie. 4. The Final Rebellion. Western Shah, 1226. Do you remember the Western Shah? The kingdom that once bowed to me, then dared to rebel while I waged war in the West? Fools. I had spared them once, but mercy is not a gift I give twice. I crossed the desert again, older now, slower perhaps, but my fire burned hotter. City after city fell. I turned their libraries to dust, their temples to rubble. When their emperor begged for peace, I gave him silence. When they asked for surrender, I gave them extinction.
6. My legacy was not my death. Understand this, I did not die, not truly. My sons would carry my fire into every kingdom east and west. My grandson, Kublai, would sit on the throne of China itself. My laws would survive centuries. My name would be remembered long after the palaces I burned turned to dust. They called me a destroyer, but I was more. I was change. I was the storm the world needed. I was Genghis Khan. Sons of the Storm. The aftermath of Genghis Khan's death, succession by Ögedei Khan, the Mongol invasion of Europe, and the height of Mongol power. Part 4X, Sons of the Storm. I left behind more than land. I left behind legacy. Ögedei ruled with law. Batu scorched the west, and under my grandsons the empire stretched from the Pacific to the Danube. At Mohi at Legnica, knights fell before arrows they could not see. In Baghdad, the Abbasids met Hulagu and the end of an age. And in China, Kublai did what even I had not. He wore the dragon's crown. The eternal storm, the life of Genghis Khan, as told by himself. Sons of the Storm, Part 4. I was gone, but my will remained. I was dead, yes. But death is not the end for a man like me. I had not built a kingdom of gold, but an empire of iron, bound by law and oath. I did not trust that my sons would agree on everything, but they knew one thing. No one could dishonor my legacy and live. Before I died, I chose my third son, Ögedei, to wear the crown. Not because he was the strongest, but because he was steady, obedient, capable of ruling fire without becoming fire himself. The Kurultai agreed, and so began the second movement of the storm. 2. Ögedei Khan. The empire grows wiser. My son ruled not with emotion, but with structure. He built Karakorum into a proper capital, carved roads through wilderness, and turned our empire into a network of power, faster than any in the world. He listened to advisors from every religion, Muslims, Christians, Buddhists, Taoists. He did not care who you prayed to, so long as your loyalty was to the empire. But do not mistake his calm for softness. Under Ögedei, the Mongol war machine reached farther than even I had dared.
3. The Fall of Jin, 1234. My unfinished war completed. The Jin dynasty, the dragon I had wounded, finally fell under Ögedei's watch. My sons and grandsons stormed the remnants of their once golden halls. Their emperors fled into caves like frightened animals. Their people bowed at last. It took 2 decades, but the dragon was dead, and I smiled beneath the grass where I lay,
for no rebellion goes unpunished in my world. 4. The invasion of Europe, 1236 to 1241. Then came the turning of the wind to the west. My grandsons, Batu, Subutai, and Gayuk, led the charge into Russia, into Poland, into Hungary, like wolves let loose in a banquet hall. At the Battle of the Kalka River, we had tasted Slavic blood. Now at Legnica and Mohi, we feasted. Knights with steel armor and long prayers could not stand against the discipline of Mongol arrows and the precision of my war doctrine. Their castles fell. Their kings wept. Europe stood on the edge of ruin. And then we turned back. Not for mercy, not for fear, but because Ogedei had died, and no Mongol can crown a new Khan without the vote of the Kurultai. Even the storm bows to the law. 5. The spirit of the storm. They say the Mongols were savage, that we brought only destruction. But look deeper. Along the Silk Road, peace flourished. Traders walked from China to Persia with silver coins and no guards. Laws were enforced, cities rebuilt, languages crossed paths. I tore down rotten walls, but only so stronger cities could rise. And my sons understood that. Batu ruled the Golden Horde, Kublai would rise in the east, Hulagu would conquer Baghdad. The world had not rid itself of me, it had only multiplied my shadow. Part 5. The Grandson's Reign. Kublai Khan's rise, the conquest of China, the fall of Baghdad, and how the Mongol world reached its peak and began to fracture. Part 5. The Grandson's Reign. Kublai brought learning, roads, and law. He welcomed foreigners, minted paper money, and ruled like a true son of heaven. But empires are not eternal. They are tested by time and torn by pride. The Golden Horde, the Ilkhanate, the Chagatai, they stopped answering to each other. They ruled in my name, but followed their own will. 1. The throne without me. After Ogedei's death, the empire trembled. A storm needs a center, and for a time, there was none. My sons and grandsons, each sharp as a blade, gathered like wolves around the
Mongol Khan, order restored, 1251. It was Mongol who brought stability. They chose him at the Kurultai in 1251, and with him the storm gathered once more. He ruled justly, spoke little, and rode far. He sent his brother Kublai to subdue China, and his other brother Hulagu to crush the Islamic world. I never saw them, but I knew their minds. Mongol was my discipline, Hulagu my fire, and Kublai my vision. 3. Baghdad burns, 1258. For centuries, Baghdad had stood as the heart of Islamic civilization. Caliphs ruled from golden thrones, thinking the steppe winds would never reach them. They were wrong. Hulagu rode at the head of a Mongol host. He crossed the mountains with siege towers and Persian engineers. In 1258, Baghdad fell. The Tigris ran black with ink from burned libraries and red with blood from its people. The last Abbasid caliph was trampled beneath hooves. I once said, if you had not committed great sins, God would not have sent a punishment like me. That message echoed through the streets of Baghdad a generation later. 4. Kublai Khan and the Dragon Throne. While Hulagu burned the west, Kublai turned his gaze to China. Not the Jin, I had shattered them, but the Song in the south. They were clever, wealthy, and rooted in 1,000 years of pride, but pride withers under siege. Kublai studied their ways. He wore their robes, read their books, built cities of stone. Some say he became more Chinese than Mongol. Let them talk. A wise man does not refuse fire just because it comes from a foreign forge. In 1271, he declared himself Emperor of China, founding the Yuan dynasty. By 1279, the Song were finished. The dragon had bowed to the wolf. 5. An empire at its peak and the first cracks. Under my grandsons, the empire stretched farther than even I had dreamed, from the coasts of Korea to the forests of Poland, from the Himalayas to Baghdad. It was the greatest land empire the world had ever seen. But it was also no longer one. Each Khan ruled his own piece, Batu in the Golden Horde, Hulagu in the Ilkhanate, Kublai in the east. They answered to no center. The storm had split into many winds. The unity I forged with blood, iron, and vision began to fade beneath crowns and borders. 6. The death of Kublai, 1294. Kublai ruled long and well. He brought roads, paper money, schools, and foreign scholars to his court. He welcomed Marco Polo and sent emissaries to distant Europe. But even the greatest branch must return to the root.
1. The storm that broke into winds. After Kublai's death, the empire I built, once one body, one breath, became many scattered hearts. 4 great khanates now stood in place of one: the Yuan dynasty in China, the Golden Horde in Russia, the Chagatai Khanate in Central Asia, and the Ilkhanate in Persia. Each ruled by my blood, and yet not one loyal to the center anymore. The name of Genghis still carried fear, but not unity. And without unity, even storms break. 2. Yuan China, the crumbling throne, 1279-1368. Kublai's heirs were not Kublai. They squabbled like children over gold and honor. The Chinese people, tired of foreign rule, rebelled. City by city, the Yuan lost grip. In 1368, the Ming dynasty rose like a tide and pushed the Mongols back into the north. Beijing was lost. The dragon reared its head again, and with that, the last of my family's rule over China ended. What I had won with steel was lost to weakness. 3. The Black Death and the Curse of the Silk Road, 1330s, 1350s. In my time, the Silk Road had been the artery of the world. Under my sons, it flourished. But even the greatest roads carry death when the time is right. The Black Death rode those same routes I carved, traveling from Asia to Europe. Cities I had once conquered now emptied overnight. The Mongol garrisons in Persia, Crimea, and the Volga fell into ruin. Trade died. Fear spread, and with fear came collapse. Fracture and rebellion in the Khanates. The Ilkhanate in Persia splintered after Abu Sa'id died without an heir. The Chagatai lands broke into east and west factions. The Golden Horde fell to civil war, brothers turning on brothers, sons on fathers. The name of Genghis remained on their lips, but not in their hearts. 5. The Last Roar. Tamerlane. 2 more the lame. Then, from the ashes of the Chagatai Khanate, rose one last flame, Timur, a man who claimed my bloodline, though distant. He said he fought in my name. Perhaps he believed it. He conquered Persia, crushed Delhi, and burned Baghdad again. He piled skulls into pyramids, ruled with terror. Some called him the second Genghis. But I watched from the silence of death and thought, no, Timur.
You are a shadow, not a storm. 6. My legacy, eternal yet forgotten. And so the empire I built with blood and brilliance faded. The cities I conquered changed names. The palaces turned to sand. The very men who owed their crowns to my breath squabbled until they lost it all. But still, even now, they study my ways. Military generals whisper my tactics. Kings fear my ruthlessness. Historians write my name in awe. And my laws, my yasa, live on in echoes. You may forget the cities, you may forget the Khans, but you will not forget me. I am not a man, I am a force. I am Genghis Khan.